This is the lab interpretation guide for the DestinyWell Toxic Elements Profile.
Many toxic elements are metals. The problem with metals in the body is that the body does not have a very good way to get rid of most of them. They tend to bioaccumulate in tissues. They can build up in bone, and then when a person goes through menopause or a man gets older and their bone density goes down, then they're re-released into the system. Or they can build up in nervous tissue or affect other things like the thyroid gland. Metals in general can be quite toxic. At DestinyWell, we define laboratory ranges in a sophisticated way. We use the standard ranges, represented by the blue bar here, from each reference lab that does a particular test to define the lab high and the lab low. If you have thyroid test results that are too low based on the lab's formal norm, then you have a diagnosis of lab low thyroid function or hypothyroidism. Similarly, for glucose, if you have a lab high blood sugar of over 126 on 2 occasions, then you meet the formal diagnosis criteria for diabetes. That's needed to make a medical diagnosis. But at DestinyWell, we think that there can be a lot more nuance. We believe that there's often an optimal range based on what we have found going forward helps people to live the healthiest lives, to be the healthiest, and to avoid disease. We triangulate this with the medical literature, with other people's standards, with our clinical practice experience, and all the different data points we can get, so we can come up with what we believe is optimal for a particular test result. DestinyWell also, in the red bars here, will define a DestinyWell high and a DestinyWell low. These may or may not line up exactly with a laboratory high or low, because sometimes we think that the range can be higher or lower, or that it needs to be different. And in between the optimal and the green bar and the low and the high and the red bars, we have orange zones for moderately high and moderately low. They're not quite optimal, but they're not in the high or low zone. Lead is one of the toxic metals we've heard a lot about in recent years. It's contaminated water supplies in schools and whole cities. Lead is damaging to the nervous system, and it's especially bad for younger children with developing brains. It can also cause anemia, nausea, and other symptoms. The reference lab range is 0 to greater than 2.50 micrograms per deciliter. DestinyWell Optimal is 0. Lead is not needed for anything in the body, and the less the better. Moderately high is 0 to 2.5, and greater than 2.5 is considered definitely abnormal. Exposure to lead comes from lead pipes and lead paints. Older houses had lead paints and the dust would flake off. Children and animals and people who got exposed to that dust, especially kids who would eat things on the floor, would get higher exposure to lead. Welding is another way that people can get exposed to lead. Many solders have lead in them, and that's vaporized during the solder process and can be inhaled. As we said, lead can cause anemia, nausea, neurotoxicity, and developmental delay in growing children. Symptoms of lead toxicity include insomnia or problems sleeping, delirium or confusional states, problems thinking or cognitive defects, and tremor. Hallucinations and seizures, convulsions are also possible. Symptoms may be different in adults and children. Abdominal pain, memory loss, and kidney failure can occur in adults, along with headache, weakness, and pain or tingling in the extremities. Early symptoms of lead poisoning in adults are very nonspecific, and they may include sort of general depression and loss of appetite, intermittent GI symptoms such as nausea, diarrhea, constipation, or intermittent abdominal pain, and muscle pain. Other signs in adults include just loss of interest, malaise, fatigue, and decreased libido, as well as problems with sleep. An unusual taste in the mouth and personality changes are also early signs. In adults, symptoms can occur anytime levels get above 40 micrograms per deciliter, but are more likely to occur at levels above 50 to 60 micrograms per deciliter. In children, symptoms begin to appear generally around 60 micrograms per deciliter. Arsenic is a highly toxic element. It's best measured in the urine because it's excreted through the kidneys and it's toxic to the kidneys. The desirable amount to have in the body, and hence the DestinyWell Optimal, is 0. We consider 0 to 42 moderately elevated, and greater than 42 micrograms per gram of creatinine in the urine to be definitely elevated and possibly toxic. The lab reference range is from 0 to 42 micrograms per gram. We get exposure to arsenic through water and through food. Rice is an especially common way to get exposed because it tends to take up and concentrate arsenic. Acute symptoms of arsenic poisoning start with headaches, confusion, diarrhea, and drowsiness. This progresses to vomiting, vomiting blood, and blood in the urine, muscle cramping and stomach pain, and more convulsions. The organs most affected by arsenic poisoning are lungs, skin, kidneys, and liver. The final result of arsenic poisoning, if it progresses, is coma and death. Low-grade to moderate arsenic poisoning is also related to an increased risk of heart disease, especially high blood pressure-related cardiovascular disease, including heart attack and stroke. Lower respiratory diseases like emphysema and asthma can be increased, as can diabetes. Vitamin A deficiency with night blindness is also associated with arsenic exposure. Arsenic increases the risk of several types of cancer, particularly skin cancer, lung cancer, liver cancer, and kidney cancer. Mercury is a very toxic element. Inorganic mercury, the kind that you get when you break an old-style thermometer, is not all that toxic, but when it gets organified and methyl and ethyl groups are attached to it by bacteria or other substances after it's been around, that type is more highly toxic to the human body. The laboratory reference range for mercury is between 0 and 5.4 micrograms per liter. We consider the desirable amount of mercury in the body to be 0. The range from 0 to 5.3 is moderately elevated, and anything greater than 5.4 micrograms per liter is elevated and potentially toxic. How do we get exposed to mercury? Well, mercury is in silver dental fillings, so it's good to consider removing them because they continue to release mercury into the body that's absorbed. Many fish that are high in the food chain build up mercury, and when we eat them, it builds up in our body. Tuna and large predatory fish like king mackerel, marlin, orange roughy, shark, and swordfish are especially high. Insecticides sometimes contain mercury, as do some preservatives for vaccines. Inorganic mercury, the kind that was in the old thermometers that would occasionally break and roll around, is not really all that toxic. But if it sits around or it's exposed to biologic systems or bacteria, then it gets organified. That means methyl or ethyl groups get attached to it. Methyl and ethyl mercury are highly toxic, absorbed into the system, and build up in the body. They're toxic to the brain, they affect cognitive function, there can be neuropsychiatric problems like depression or thought disorders. They affect enzyme systems all over the body and also can be toxic to many different organs, including the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, and the immune system. Cadmium is another highly toxic metal. Exposure comes from industrial work with processes involving cadmium and from tobacco smoke, as well as from food, water, and especially meat. Reference range lab reports for cadmium show 0 as the low and greater than 1.03 as the high. We at Destiny Well consider 0 the optimal range as no amount of cadmium is helpful in the body. 0 to 1.03 moderately elevated, and greater than 1.03 definitely elevated. Well, where do we get exposed to cadmium? Well, we get it from industrial waste and from living near factories or working in industrial processes that use cadmium. Smokers get exposed to cadmium through the tobacco products they use. There's also cadmium in food and water and meats. Symptoms of cadmium toxicity include respiratory distress, especially when it's inhaled, kidney failure, and weak, brittle, and painful bones. Tests included in the Destiny Well toxic elements profile include blood level for lead, blood level for mercury, urine level for arsenic, and blood level for cadmium. At Destiny Well, we've been extremely fortunate to find some amazingly good coaches, people with backgrounds of success in varied fields who bring all sorts of resources and talent and skill to help you. These folks have many years of clinical experience, and they know how to be of assistance at every step of the way, from motivation to connecting you with the right resources to finding things that you need to get you on your journey. To learn more, go to destinywell.com www.ccc.org/coaching to meet our team and find out how they can be of service to you.